My whole identity is Tibet. Everything I do is for the sake of Tibet.
I guess most of our culture and our tradition and the way we live has a really strong tie to the Buddhist scripture and Buddhism as a religion.
His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, is about to turn 91. He's the spiritual leader of millions of Tibetan Buddhists worldwide. With each year, the contentious question of his succession intensifies.
达赖喇嘛的转世
The reincarnation of the Dalai Lama must adhere to the principle of domestic search, golden urn draw and approval by the central government.
The Chinese government wants to control who will be the next Dalai Lama, while Tibetan Buddhists want that decision to be made by the current Dalai Lama in line with traditional Tibetan Buddhist beliefs.
As far as my own rebirth is concerned, the final authority is myself, no one else. And obviously, not Chinese communist.
The Chinese government, their plan, of course, is to select their own Dalai Lama and to put that puppet Dalai Lama in office.
Our sole protector is His Holiness, so without him, what will happen, What will the Chinese do?
His birthday is both a cause for celebration for us, it's a time for us to gather as a community, and it is tinged with a bit of anxiety for us about what it means for us in the future.
I really hope that the world sees how wrong it is for China to choose the next Dalai Lama, because it's not a political matter, it's a religious matter.
So are we heading towards a major clash between religion and politics? And are we facing the prospect of a world with two Dalai Lamas? It's a cold Canberra morning, and the Australia-Tibet Council and supporters are here at Parliament House for their annual lobby day. They're hoping to ensure the Australian government will recognise the Dalai Lama's choice for his successor and not China's choice. Among the group are Yangkyi, who's travelled from Newcastle, and Shenpen, who lives locally in Canberra.
We are here to ask the Australian government to take a stance in keeping with democratic governments across the world, like the US, like the EU, publicly stating that the Australian government will only engage with and recognise a Dalai Lama that is appointed in accordance with the wishes of the current Dalai Lama.
Politicians from across the spectrum, Liberal, Labor, Greens and Independent, have come together to hear directly from Tibetan Australians about their concerns both here and in Tibet.
So on this Tibetan Lobby Day, we extend our deepest appreciation to Tibetans wise and older and Tibetans younger, and we welcome them to their national parliament.
Tibetan existence is actually at a really critical point in time. It's very vulnerable right now. In the Tibetan space, simply being Tibetan is an act of resistance, really. So when Tibetans here in Australia don their cultural dress, speak Tibetan language, and just celebrate the life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, this is a powerful act of resistance.
My name is Yangkyi. I was born in Tibet and grew up there until I was 12 and came to Australia. My father became a political prisoner when I was 4 months old and had to escape Tibet. But due to the dangers of travelling over the Himalayas to India on foot, they had no choice but to leave me with my extended family in Tibet. I grew up under CCP's rule, like many other Tibetan children. I felt completely disconnected to my Tibetan identity, only speaking Mandarin and punished for speaking Tibetan. I'm here today because I want to feel safe. Thank you.
Some politicians are visibly moved by these stories. Among them is Senator Barbara Pocock.
Yes, very nice to meet you too. Thank you so much. I think of my own grandchild who's 4 months old. I cannot imagine the decision that your mother had to make and your father to set aside a 4-month-old child and make that journey. I'm glad that all those years later you were able to come and clearly make a contribution in our own community.
Thank you.
Ready? 3, 2, 1. Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet!
Shenpen and his family live close to his father Chope, who worked for the Dalai Lama for more than 2 decades.
Zo lobby day la. Nganzo ta Melbourne, Sydney, Newcastle 창만이 배워. 미 미타 니슈스토에서 Senator, MPs.
Like many Tibetans in Australia, they're still deeply connected to their homeland and the Dalai Lama.
We have a central figure, our North Star, who basically guides us in every walk of life. And so with him as an example for us, we have something bigger to aim for. We have a purpose much larger than ourselves to work for. Being a Tibetan and sort of leaning into your heritage is just one of the things that comes by the by in aspiring to live a life that is the way that His Holiness is teaching us.
Chope is one of the generation of Tibetans who fled after the failed Tibetan uprising in 1959, almost a decade after Tibet was annexed by China. He was 11 years old at the time.
At the wake of Chinese invasion, my parents decided to escape from Tibet and try to find a safer place. We did not know at that time the fate of His Holiness.
While the Dalai Lama sought refuge in India, Chope and his family arrived in Mustang, Nepal, after crossing the mountains in treacherous conditions.
Because so many Tibetan refugees, and thousands of them, poured into this tiny little valley, food was scarce. So that was the beginning of the hardship. My father died there, my sister died there, her daughter died there, all our animals died there, and it was a very difficult time.
Life in exile took Chope to several Tibetan settlements in Nepal. As a young man, he travelled to England to study. With little connection to his Buddhist community, his spirituality was tested.
When I got in England, I became more hard, even questioning my Buddhist faith.
After finishing his studies, he went to Dharmshala, India, where he met the Dalai Lama, and everything changed.
When you meet His Holiness, every worry, every negative emotion just melts away. Here was a man who was completely compassionate. If I were to take out my heart and fresh and ask him to keep it for me in my next generations, next lives, I thought he would do it. And then I said, I don't know whether I'm a Buddhist or not, so please give me a Buddhist vow. He giggled, he kind of laughed, and he said, by saying this, you're a Buddhist. So don't need to get a special vow.
Chope served as a representative for the Central Tibetan administration in many countries around the world. In 1998, Chope and his family made a home in Australia. Now he has 4 grandkids to pass his culture on to.
My dad instilled in us a pride in our heritage, educating us about our history, about Tibetan Buddhism, and about the richness of the culture.
I said, well done.
And then Mum took that and almost operationalized that on a day-to-day basis, sort of reminding us constantly about the things.
I think maybe part of us teaching them about the culture is creating the nostalgia that they'll always come back to, and a lot of that I think is tied to food. We want to make sure that when they're in their 30s and they eat this, they think, oh, Like it just like triggers certain memories. I would hope that those memories are then tied to their cultural identity.
For most Tibetans, this cultural identity is inseparable from the spiritual leadership of the Dalai Lama. There have only been 14 Dalai Lamas since 1391. According to Tibetan Buddhist belief, each is the reincarnation of the previous one, believed to be all the same being, but alive at different times. This Dalai Lama was recognised when he was 2 years old. Tibetan Buddhists believe that, like all previous Dalai Lamas, he will choose the time and place of his own reincarnation. Over the years, he's hinted he could reincarnate as male or female, or even not at all.
If the circumstances are such, female Dalai Lama is more useful, then automatically female Dalai Lama come.
When he celebrated his 90th birthday last year, he made it clear that there will be a 15th Dalai Lama, and that senior lamas in his own trust have the sole authority for finding his next incarnation. In his recent book, he wrote that his successor would be born in the free world.
As the Dalai Lama confirms that he will have a successor, one who will be recognized by the trust he founded and won't come from China. But Beijing, though, has rejected the landmark announcement by the head of Tibetan Buddhism, saying the future Dalai Lama can only be approved by the Communist Party.
达赖喇嘛的转世
The reincarnation of the Dalai Lama must adhere to the principle of domestic search, golden urn draw and approval by the central government, and be handled in accordance with religious rituals, historical customs and national laws and regulations.
Rebirth happens to everybody. We are all rebirth of something, somebody, or dog or insect, whatever. We are rebirth. A reincarnation is intentional. So the person who is reincarnating would say, okay, I'll be born in this place to this parents on this time. But the communists is saying, the Dalai Lama, we legislate the Dalai Lama to be born here. It is beyond belief.
If you accept that the current Dalai Lama can be reincarnated, then you're accepting that he has the spiritual authority to choose a place and time to be reborn. But you have spent the last 70 years undermining His Holiness and calling him a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Recent tensions between the Tibetans and the Chinese government centre over the Panchen Lama.
The Panchen Lama, who's the second highest incarnated Lama in Tibetan Buddhism, would be the one who would say directly who the next Dalai Lama was.
The most recent Panchen Lama's reincarnation was recognised in 1995 as a 6-year-old boy, but he was swiftly taken away by the Chinese Communist Party and has been disappeared ever since. The CCP replaced him with their own Panchen Lama.
They knew and they recognised the role the Panchen Lama would play eventually when His Holiness passed away. They've shown us what they're capable of and what they will do.
They talk about time-honoured traditions, but it's sort of laughable to see a communist party that is only a few decades old have any sort of say over an institution that is many hundreds of years old. And so it is a scary prospect because it's a weird world we live in and the truth doesn't necessarily matter anymore.
Compass contacted the Chinese Consul General in Sydney, who declined an interview but provided this statement.
The Chinese government upholds the principle of independence and self-governance in religious affairs and administers the reincarnation of living Buddhas, including that of the Dalai Lama, in accordance with the law. No interference by any external forces will be allowed.
The Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government in exile are based in the foothills of the Himalayas in Dharmshala, India. Here, Tibetans are free to express their religion and culture. Today, a multi-party delegation of Australian parliamentarians has come to see the Dalai Lama and members of the Central Tibetan Administration. Their visit coincides with the 36th anniversary of the Dalai Lama's Nobel Peace Prize, and celebrations are in full swing.
We are delighted to acknowledge the presence of honourable members of parliament and journalists from France, Australia, New Zealand at today's gathering here.
We are deeply moved, deeply humbled, and very, very delighted to share this very special day with you.
Amid the festivities, there was a rare moment to meet with the Dalai Lama himself.
It was much more profound than I expected it to be, actually. Just seeing all these parliamentarians from across the world who are used to operating in an adversarial environment become childlike under his touch.
It was actually quite overwhelming. I felt the emotion of the moment and I could just feel that kindness coming from him, and I will be taking that kindness and that message of peace back home with me. I love that the Dalai Lama talked about how his hearing and his sight and his teeth are very good. That's very encouraging. I want him to live a long time. He talked about the need for compassion around the world and the need to respect human rights. I can say that the Australian Parliament will continue across all parties to pay attention to the situation of Tibetans and to push for their right to determine who their next Dalai Lama is.
Yangkyi moved to Australia at 12 and now lives in Newcastle, New South Wales. She grew up under Chinese rule in Tibet and had to go to a Chinese state-run boarding school away from her village.
They nearly tried to erase my identity as a Tibetan. It seemed like a normal school, you know, where you get taught everything, but it's all in Chinese. Tibetan wasn't allowed to be spoken at that school, and you do get punished for speaking Tibetan. You weren't allowed to represent anything that's Tibetan. That included things like having beads around your hands, or we usually wear sacred texts around our neck, or pictures of lamas around our neck. That is not allowed. So when I went back home from that school, I mean, I'm ashamed to say this, but I'm basically telling my family, you know, in Tibet that they shouldn't be speaking Tibetan.
Language and culture is under attack in Tibet. Chinese are removing Tibetan children, so it's estimated that up to 1 million Tibetan children are now in Chinese state-run institutions.
Those schools will wipe out generations of knowledge, Tibetan traditions, Tibetan culture. They will basically brainwash the kids if they were to tell those Tibetan kids that Tibet has always been China. That is possible. It is very scary to think that, you know, a whole generation of Tibetan children being taught the wrong history.
In a previous statement, the Chinese embassy said the following:
Boarding or not is entirely decided by students and parents. There is no so-called being forced or punishment at all. Boarding students can go home regularly, and parents can visit their children at school at any time. Courses of traditional culture are widely available. Students are encouraged to wear traditional dresses at these schools.
After 12 years apart, Yangkyi was finally reunited with her parents, who brought her to join them in Australia. She's now studying to be a primary school teacher and is very active in the Australian Tibetan community.
First one goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I volunteered to be a dance teacher in the Tibetan community. For every event that we have, for example, His Holiness's birthday, we try and prepare a few performances. And 1, 2, 3, and obviously you guys have to jump a lot. Yep. Okay, let's try with music. Ready? Kids love it. They are very proud to dance in their traditional clothes. My father got in trouble with the Chinese Communist Party because he was bringing Tibetan scriptures and Tibetan political texts from India back to Tibet. His motivation was to preserve the Tibetan culture as much as he can. That tells us who we are in history. Most of our culture and our tradition and the way we live has a really strong tie to Buddhism as a religion. I think that's what's holding us together.
Tibetan language schools around the world are keeping Tibetan culture and religious identity alive in exile. This one meets every Saturday morning.
When I'm here, I feel like there's a deep cultural connection as well as religious because they're my people, you know. We have the same, not only heritage, but the same goal at the end, which is to preserve our language.
It helps me kind of maintain my language because over time, because we're in an English-speaking country, we tend to forget our own language because we don't speak it often.
It is a struggle to keep your language alive. I was blessed by having sort of parents with the foresight to teach us Tibetan as a first language. But you're seeing almost a bit of a renaissance now, understanding the importance of Tibetan language here in exile in the West. It is an uphill battle, but through the infrastructure built by the Central Tibetan Administration, it is a battle that we are waging actually quite successfully.
Today, the students are rehearsing for an upcoming performance.
So I learnt myself on YouTube. I feel like I'm really talented when I'm playing those instruments. I'm like, damn, go me, you know? I'm multi-talented.
I think people who play instruments are really cool, but I don't know how to play any English instruments, so being able to play my cultural instruments makes me feel better.
Events like this, honouring the Dalai Lama's Nobel Peace Prize, are an opportunity for the wider Tibetan community to come together.
My whole identity is Tibet. Everything I do is for the sake of Tibet. In Western societies, Tibetans are able to learn our culture and heritage freely. So we do bear the responsibilities of the Tibetan identity.
For the younger generation, the prospect of a world without the 14th Dalai Lama is almost too hard to think about.
I kind of just like not thinking about it, just feeling his presence, watching videos, those lectures, stuff like that. Because we're here and he's up there, and it just feels wrong to think about just him passing.
We call him Yangkyi, which means our saviour. So without our saviour, I don't know what will happen, you know?
No one knows who the next Dalai Lama will be, but it's clear that here in Australia, the resilience and spirit of Tibetan Buddhists will endure.
What China has realised is that even after 70 years, they've never won the hearts and minds of Tibetan people. The hearts and minds of Tibetan people are purely with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. They're trying to sever that connection completely.
If they can get away with saying something so irrational, like an atheist communist party has the authority to appoint a spiritual leader, then, you know, what's next? Are we going to expect a Pope Xi Jinping I come the next Vatican conclave?
While the Australian government has made supportive statements at the United Nations Human Rights Council, at this time the Tibetan community here would like a more public declaration of reassurance.
I think the Australian government has a role to play in upholding international law. We need to be using the diplomatic tools that we have that recognises the ongoing conflict between China and Tibet and applies some pressure for a peaceful resolution.
The essence of Buddhism is wisdom and compassion. If somehow anger, in my case, anger against the Chinese occupation and atrocities in Tibet, if that doesn't go away, then my practice is still not perfect.
I have full trust on His Holiness. I have full trust the fact that He will come back to us. Whatever he's born as, I just know that He will come back to us.